Welcome to the Cancer Interviews Podcast, where we are sharing the cancer journey together through interviews with ordinary people whose lives have somehow been impacted by cancer. And now today's host, two-time Hodgkin lymphoma cancer patient, autologous stem cell transplant recipient, husband, father, and extremely grateful cancer survivor, Jim Foster.
Welcome to the show, my friends and teammates. If you happen to be joining us for the first time, I'd like to personally thank you and invite you to be a part of our team. We want you to know that you and what you're going through are the sole purpose of this podcast. We refer to ourselves as Team Journey. You're not alone. You're a part of our team, and we are sharing the cancer journey together. So let's get started. I'm so excited to introduce a very good friend of mine here today, Mr. Bruce Morton. Bruce, are you ready to share the journey?
Ready. Let's do it.
All right. Well, Bruce is a prostate cancer survivor. He's been in remission now for 17 years. He lives in Denver, Colorado, has enjoyed a long career in the radio sports business. He enjoys international travel, and we can all learn a great deal from what Bruce has to share with us here today. So please join me in welcoming Bruce Morton to the show. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks very much, Jim. Great to be here.
Well, I've given a very brief introduction of you, Bruce, but before we get into talking about your cancer journey, please take a moment and tell us a little bit more about yourself, like where you're from, and looking back, what your interests were, your career, and so forth, and what your life was like prior to experiencing cancer.
Well, Jim, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I became interested in pursuing a career in sports broadcasting dating back to a very early age when my father and grandfather took me to a college basketball game, and right after the basketball game, my dad hoisted me on his shoulders. I was 8 years old, and I looked up and saw the broadcasters of the game wrapping up the broadcast. I was fascinated by that, and that began my interest in radio and sports broadcasting, and that eventually led to a career as I bounced around to radio stations around the country. And in 1984, I got my big break when I was hired as a reporter and producer for ABC Radio Sports in New York. That's where I was for 17 years, and not long after that, I moved to Denver.
Gotcha. Well, I know we've been friends for quite a while and have had the opportunity to visit you out there in New York before, and we're so glad you're living in Denver now. And what would you say, did you notice something in your daily life that led you to think that something was physically wrong with you? Tell us about that.
Well, I certainly didn't feel anything abnormal. There was no pain or anything like that. It's just that in the summer of 2000, I went in for my annual physical, and it was interesting to note that in previous years, I would go in for my physical, and I would joke with my father when I was done with the physical, and I said, well, I'm not a candidate for prostate cancer. I would say that each year, and then in the summer of 2000, my physician noticed something awry with my PSA, just from the routine blood work that was done on me as part of my annual physical. That led to a chain of events that included a biopsy, and then in December of that year, 2000, that is when I was diagnosed and learned that I had prostate cancer.
Gotcha. So it was just a regular annual physical and a blood test and so forth, checking your PSA. Those were the tests that ultimately led to your diagnosis.
That is correct. I had a PSA of 4.1, which is not through the roof, but it's higher than normal, and that got my doctor's attention. And again, that started the chain of events that led to the biopsy and the diagnosis.
Gotcha. Well, what was your initial reaction and your emotions and feelings when you first got this news?
I was in the doctor's office, and as he said this to me, just tears started rolling down my face. I couldn't believe this was happening. And then the doctor's office to which I went was only about a half mile walk from home. So I walked to his office for that appointment that day, and then I walked home, and I had walked down this street hundreds of times in the time that I had lived in Hackensack, New Jersey. That's where I was at the time. And then it just really hit me, and here I was in broad daylight, a grown man walking down the street just crying my eyes out. I couldn't believe what I just heard.
Wow. Oh, that's heavy. What did you do following that? Did you seek out more than one medical opinion to confirm your diagnosis? And if so, how did you go about that?
Well, I have to go back to the day in which I was diagnosed. I called a coworker of mine who was based in Florida, and we spoke on the phone, and then he suggested that I contact my former boss with my job at ABC, and I contacted him, and he suggested that I get a second opinion because I was 46 years old at the time, and 47, and so, you know, he made mention that that's an extremely young age for somebody to be diagnosed with prostate cancer, which was correct, but he thought that the doctor saying that I should get my prostate removed was perhaps overreacting on the doctor's part, and that I should get a second opinion. And so my boss, who was no longer my boss, immediately assumed the role of being my boss, and he said, "Here's what you're going to do." He said, "You're going to go to Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York, which is an elite cancer hospital." He said, "And then after that, then you're going to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, which is another elite hospital." He said to me, "You know where Sloan Kettering is?" And I did, because I was working in New York. And he said, "If you don't know your way around Baltimore, I will drive you there myself."
Wow.
And that really made an impression on me. But what happened was I went to Sloan Kettering. I was there on Martin Luther King Day 2001, and I got not one but two second opinions. So I got a second opinion and a third opinion, and both of these doctors at Sloan Kettering said, "You don't have to have your prostate removed. You're a perfect candidate for a procedure that's affectionately known as the seeds, in which you get these radioactive implants in your prostate, and that kills the cancer." Anyway, in the meantime, a radio friend of mine in New York had been diagnosed with prostate cancer also at a young age. We were approximately the same age. He was diagnosed about 6 months before me, and I contacted him, and he told me about these other two cancer doctors at another New York hospital, St. Luke's Roosevelt, and he said, "I want you to see these guys. They saved my life." And so I saw each one of those guys, a urologist and radiation oncologist. I saw them independently, and both of them said that I was a perfect candidate for the seat. So I had gotten a second, third, fourth, and fifth opinion.
Wow.
They all said the same thing, and by that time I was convinced. So as it turns out, I never contacted the initial doctor again. And in February, I wanted to be very proactive about this. I wanted this off my plate. And in February of 2001, I went into St. Luke's Roosevelt and got the seeds, and I've been in remission 17 years.
Okay, so it was worked out very well for you that you had more than one opinion. You got second, third, fourth, and fifth opinion, and that led you to the knowledge that there were a couple different types of treatments and procedures that you could select from, and you felt, sounds like, that you made a good decision based on going and talking to all of those doctors.
Right. I felt that at the time, and I certainly feel that now.
Okay. So Bruce, I know you were living in Hackensack, New Jersey at the time. Did you end up going ahead with the doctors and the hospital there in New York City, or how did that work out? What can you tell us about that?
Yes, the procedure was done on an outpatient basis at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital in Manhattan. The previous night I had stayed at a hotel in New York so that I could just make a nice 10-minute walk to the hospital, underwent the procedure on an outpatient basis, and that evening a coworker of mine from ABC picked me up at the hospital, took me home, stayed with me just in case something went wrong, which it didn't. Then he brought me back into the city the following morning, and I went in for a follow-up visit.
Okay, wow. Well, that was a good friend that you had there to do that for you. Um, were you working at this time? And if so, were you able to continue to work, or did you have to take some time off? Tell us about that.
I took just a couple of days off, but in only just a few days, I was right back in there and working.
Wow. So you had very little uh, need to take additional time off for any type of recovery from that procedure. Um, that's pretty rare.
Yes, and I guess that is testament to the fine work done by the doctors at St. Luke Roosevelt.
Right, right. Did you have any family or friends close by? You had your one friend that were able to be there for moral support, or did you have people that you talked to over the phone and so forth, or was there a network of people there to support you?
No, there weren't, because all the people close enough to me that might have been part of that, they were all in different parts of the country. So the only person who really was involved with me and my hospital stay was the coworker who got me and took me home.
Gotcha. Well, one other question that a lot of our teammates are always curious about is, did you lose your hair from the type of procedure that you underwent?
Thankfully, no, that was not a problem.
What was the worst one or two side effects or inconveniences that you did have?
I would say that there was a lot of frequent urination, and it reached the point in which I was put in a position in which I had to track how often I went to the bathroom, and I was given like a plastic container that measured the amount that I had urinated. So I had to keep track of how often I urinated and how much I urinated.
Okay, now, did you have to have a catheter at some point, or did you have to deal with that?
Yes, the catheter was put in when I was under anesthesia with the procedure, so I had no idea what went on in terms of it being put into me. And then the follow-up visit the next day involved the catheter getting removed.
Was there any complications with having that removed?
That was probably the greatest amount of physical pain I've ever felt in my life, but it was like a lightning bolt. It was just like it was like half a second, and so it was done right away.
Now, I remember you telling me once that there was a nurse or someone there that told you after it was removed that it would take a little while for things to start functioning properly. What was that waiting time frame like, and how did you deal with that?
Well, it wasn't a very long wait. The number one fear that I had going forward coming out of this procedure related to my ability to go to the bathroom. That was the number one thing, and I was informed by the nurse that I would learn right away whether the muscles that are used to prevent the muscles that allow you to hold it when you're waiting to go to the bathroom, I would find out right away whether those muscles would be functioning. And so when the catheter was removed, the nurse directed me to a water cooler and said, drink a few cups of water, and then in the next half hour, 45 minutes, you may have to go to the bathroom. The bathroom is the second door on the right, and good luck. And so I drank a few cups of water and then went down the hall to the bathroom and tried, for lack of a better word, regulating my urinating. And there was some trauma in my urinary canal because of the catheter, and so that first time it was painful going to the bathroom, but I rejoiced at the notion that I was capable. The muscles that regulate whether you urinate or not urinating, those muscles were working, and so that was a relief beyond measure.
Wow. Well, the simple things in life that we so often take for granted, and I'm just so happy that it all worked out in your favor there, that things return to normal. So glad to hear that. Let me ask you this. Did you have health insurance that paid for everything? And if not, how did you pay for medical expenses?
I had health insurance. It didn't pay for everything, but if memory serves, I think the procedure would have cost like $11,000, and insurance paid for all but about $2,900 of it.
Okay. So it paid the bulk of it.
Correct.
And that could have been a real hardship had you not had some insurance to pay for the large expense of the procedure. So you have to be thankful for that. What would you say was the lowest point during your cancer journey, and what can you share about that?
Well, it's standard procedure, as I learned later, that with the seeds, with that sort of procedure, it is standard that an indicator, your PSA, is going to go up at about the 18-month mark after the procedure. And sure enough, in concert with that, my PSA went up. And so I was concerned about that, because I was told by the doctors not to worry, it'll come back down. There's nothing we can give you by way of medicine that will combat this. You're just going to have to wait this out. To me, that was cold comfort, because I wanted my PSA to come back down right away, and it didn't. I was just going to have to wait for like 3 months for my next blood test to check out the progress of my PSA. And in 3 months, it inched its way down. It wasn't the precipitous drop that I wanted, but it inched its way down. Waited another 3 months, and then it took a much bigger drop. And then after that, it dropped quite a bit. And now I'm happy to report it is the norm that my PSA is less than 0.1.
Wow. Well, that's great news. And it's sometimes you just really have to reach within and find the strength to overcome that waiting period, having to wait for 6 months, and in your case, even a little bit longer, to have it come down. How did you deal with that stress?
Well, and this is not an uncommon scenario. I think this happens a lot of times when people when people encounter an illness, and the illness appears to be bigger than they are. I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but it applied to me. I prayed some. I put my faith in God, because I thought this was bigger than I was, and that I could not overcome it on my own. So that was and is part of the scenario pertaining to my recovery then and now.
Well, I'm glad that you have that strength to carry you through. And other than being told that your cancer was finally in remission, what was one of your favorite memories of your cancer journey?
I'm not sure if I have a favorite moment, except for just the repeated good news that came with the results of my latest checkup. That once my PSA started veering in the right direction and getting back on course, and reaching a point in which it was almost negligible, to go in each time and get a good report. That was very uplifting, and I was obviously extremely thankful for that.
Well, we're all thankful for that, for sure. Did you encounter any setbacks? You've mentioned a couple things, like the increased PSA level and so forth. Were there any setbacks that you weren't expecting that came along somewhere during your cancer journey?
No, I would say just the worst part of it was in the first year, in which I had this really frequent urination. It has this procedure has it has manifested itself with my taking kind of a preemptive approach to peeing, so that I don't put myself in a position in which I have to go and I have to get to a bathroom. So I probably go to the bathroom maybe more times than I need to, but it's done with an eye towards reducing or eliminating the possibility of having to go and not necessarily being near a place where I can.
Okay. So when your doctor told you words to the effect that your cancer was in remission, I guess that was based on when your PSA level had came down and you were at your checkup. Is that basically when you found out that you were effectively in remission?
Well, I would say the best answer to that is because I kept getting, after that, early part, I kept getting good reports. I would say perhaps the best news of all didn't necessarily come from a doctor. It came from a conventional wisdom that with my particular procedure, if you get to 5 years, if you're cancer-free after 5 years, the conventional wisdom is that odds are very, very high that you've beaten it. So when I got to the 5-year mark, that's when I really rejoiced. A doctor didn't necessarily say, well, you're over the hump or something like that. It's just
Right.
I had heard again and again, you get to 5 years and you're in good shape. So when I hit the 5-year mark after the procedure, I was very happy.
Well, was there something that you had been looking forward to doing in anticipation of that day, and what was that like?
Well, as part of my job, part of the work that I do, I in 2001 and 2002, I worked for an outfit called Tennis Radio Network, which sent reporters to different tennis events around the world, and I ended up covering this tennis event in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And when I was there, I happened to stay at a very, very high-end hotel, which is not consistent with my usual hotel experiences. I stayed at the Four Seasons in Buenos Aires, and I had such a good time staying there that I thought, boy, I really want to come back here when I'm not in a working capacity, but this would be expensive, and for me to come back here, I would have to have a really, really good reason. I'd have to have a special reason for flying all the way down to Argentina and then staying at this very high-end hotel. Then it occurred to me that getting to 5 years being cancer-free, that's special.
Sure.
That merits something a little over the top like this. So I returned to Buenos Aires and the Four Seasons in 2006 to save a few nights to celebrate by being cancer-free.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, I know when you had went there, you told me about a particular restaurant that you went to, and I know you've got some interesting stories to tell about that. What can you tell us about that restaurant and the name of it and what your experience was like?
Well, the name of it is El Mirasol, which is Spanish for the sunflower. And I don't know what sunflowers have to do with steak, but steak is a big thing food-wise in Argentina. And when I was there the first time in 2002, my job involved just a lot of work, and here it was 11:30 at night, and I'd been working for like 12 hours that day, and I still had tons of work to do, and I decided to just call timeout and go out and get something to eat, and I discovered El Mirasol, which was a 5-minute walk from the Four Seasons. I went in there at 11:30 at night, and Buenos Aires is kind of like a European city, and a lot of people go out and eat late at night. I went to this restaurant, and it was packed, but I had the best steak I'd ever had in my life. And so I never forgot that. And so when I came back in 2006, I thought, well, I have to go to El Mirasol once or twice while I'm there and have another steak. And so I went in there, and I know a little Spanish. I'm not fluent by any means, but I went in there and I told the waiter that I was in Buenos Aires to celebrate being cancer-free for 5 years, and then I specifically wanted to come to El Mirasol to celebrate this, and then I said to the waiter, my hotel, the Four Seasons, just 5 minutes away. Is it okay if I come back and just get a picture with you just to celebrate this? And he said, yeah. And anyway, I came back, and this was after I'd finished eating. I came back, and the manager of the place led me to this table, and the only thing on the table was a glass of champagne.
Wow.
And they had done. I really don't like champagne, but that was not the time to say it. But I was so touched that these people, total strangers, would go to these lengths to acknowledge and honor this very special juncture in my life. That
Wow.
they would do that. And so I had I took a picture of the glass of champagne and had a picture taken of myself and the waiter and the manager, and that was one fantastic and quite obviously unforgettable experience.
Wow, that is priceless. That is priceless. What have you been doing with your life since going through your cancer journey and entering remission?
Well, I was working in Denver as a reporter, covering news in Denver and also covering sports for Metro Networks, which was a national radio news service. And in 2008, they experienced, I guess, some financial reverses, and they closed down a lot of their news bureaus around the country, including the news bureau in Denver. And so I lost my full-time staff position with Metro. I continued with them on a freelance basis covering sports, which I do to this day. But I didn't have a full-time job. I didn't have benefits anymore. And so that ushered in a very dark time in my life when I was looking for a job doing something, anything, to keep the lights on. And then in 2013, almost 5 years later, I got a job with a hotel in downtown Denver working as a bellman, and I'm happy to say that I've been there ever since.
Well, that's wonderful. And I know a couple of years ago when you were celebrating your 15-year remission, you had an opportunity to go back to Argentina. And tell us a little bit about that reunion tour.
Well, I went back there in 2016 with a friend of mine from San Francisco, and we kind of decided that the Four Seasons would be a bit too expensive. So because I was working for a hotel chain, I was able to get us a room at one of the hotels that's affiliated with my hotel in Buenos Aires. So we were able to stay there for a much lower rate, and it was still a pretty good hotel. So we were there for 5 nights and just had a great time.
And you went back and had dinner once or twice while you were there?
Twice. When I went to, I insisted. If there's anything that I insist on while we're there, it's going to El Mutola twice in the 5 nights. So we went there like the second night and the last night there. That was the one thing I insisted on when we went down there.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a great story. So what are your hopes and dreams for the future now, Bruce?
Well, I'm 64 years old, and I'm reaching a point in terms of full-time employment in which I'm looking forward to retiring from full-time employment and taking things a bit easier. As I said, I still do my radio sports work on a freelance basis, and I would plan to continue to do that for something to do, some supplemental income, et cetera, but I'm looking forward to retiring from full-time work, which I hope to do in late 2019.
Well, congratulations on that. And you've had quite a career with doing a couple different things in your life with the broadcasting and also working at the hotel and so forth. So wish you the very best with retirement coming up next year. And what words of wisdom would you give to our listeners who are currently battling cancer, and some of them who may have just started their journey and others who've been on their journey for quite a while?
I don't have anything really deep or complicated, and the following is not an original thought by any stretch, but I would say this is to keep a positive outlook about your journey and your battle with cancer. Healthcare professionals of every stripe have said repeatedly that having a positive outlook toward your journey, your life, can only be therapeutic, can only aid your recovery and your journey and your battle. So keep a positive outlook, and I'm not saying that in and of itself will cure you or turn things around on a wholesale basis, but it will help.
So now it's time for what I call our highlights round. We're getting near the end of the interview here, but I'll ask a series of short questions and you provide the answers. Sound good?
Sounds fine. Let's do it.
Okay. What was the scariest thing about your experience with cancer?
I would say probably just getting the news that I had it. I felt once the procedure started, I always felt like I was in good hands, so I never really felt scared there. As a matter of fact, just before the procedure started, I was joking with the OR team, and I was making them laugh. I was making them relax instead of the other way around. So I would just say the scariest part was just getting the news, and maybe the part 18 months in when my PSA went up, even though I was told that would happen, that was still a little bit scary as well.
Right, right. Can you give us an example of a small accomplishment that you achieved along the way, and what that was like and how that made you feel?
I would say just the closest thing I can say to an accomplishment is just that to some degree I can still exercise. I used to be a competitive runner, but in a totally unrelated development, I was diagnosed with tendinitis in my left quad where it attaches to my knee, which has a slight effect on how I walk. But I'm just thankful for every day that I can live a relatively normal physical life. I'm very thankful for that.
Well said. Well said. That's so true. What would you say was the best piece of advice you ever received, and how did that help you through your journey?
I would say the best piece of advice was just going to the doctors the best pieces of advice I got, one was from the ex-boss saying get a second opinion. I ended up getting a second, third, fourth, and fifth. And then the other bit of advice was from my radio friend who ushered me in the direction of the doctors who performed the procedure. So I guess that's the best advice. I had always had kind of a positive outlook in terms of the journey, and so that was not a product of any advice I got from anybody else. So I guess the best advice I got was the advice to get another opinion, and then the other bit of advice I got that it was good was to go to the doctors that I went to. My friend had said to me, quote, "They saved my life," and I guess I can say the same thing.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing those words of wisdom, Bruce. And Team Journey, that advice is coming from someone who truly has walked the walk and isn't just talking the talk. And I hope you can take away some of this valuable information and apply it in your own life and help improve your cancer journey. Well, Bruce, we're so happy for you, and we wish you continued good health. And thank you so much for being so generous with your time, your expertise, and your knowledge. And we truly appreciate you sharing your journey with us today. And Team Journey salutes you, Bruce, and we will see you on down the road.
Thanks so much, Jim. Great to have the chance to share this with you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.